Hello, everyone, and welcome to my Week 4 discussion board for MPA 530. This presentation is going to talk about the CAFR, and I'm going to be using the City of Rancho Cucamonga's CAFR report for this presentation. So before we jump into the CAFR, I'll go through an organizational overview, and then we'll jump into the CAFR review. So real quick before we start, the City of Rancho Cucamonga was established in 1977. It is located in San Bernardino County, just north of Ontario. Has a population of just shy of 175,000, covers 40 square miles, and is made up of 6 council districts. So jumping into the CAFR. So what is a CAFR? A CAFR is a comprehensive annual financial report, and it's a report that details the fiscal health of an organization on a short-term basis. It's not a document that will outline long-term health, but instead it focuses on if an organization is able to sustain its operations, to provide services, and to pay for its bills in the future. How does it differ from a budget? It differs from a budget as a budget is setting expenditure targets and revenue predictions at the beginning of a fiscal year. However, a CAFR is really telling the story of the actual expenditures and actual revenues that were achieved during that fiscal year at the end. And the CAFR can, and that can be compared to the budget and used as a tool for future budget setting when going through that exercise. A CAFR also differs from a budget as a CAFR goes through an audit, and most likely by an independent auditor, where a budget does not go through that process. And having that outside party audit the CAFR adds some transparency and accountability to the accounting standards which have been set for that report. Moving on, so how do we determine, or how can we tell if an agency is solvent based on the CAFR? And so a little bit more complex of a question, but looking at the CAFR, there's a few different ways to look for solvency. One indicator that you can evaluate to have a sense of the organization's level of solvency is using Brown's 10-point test. There are obviously 10 points to this test. I just chose 3 to evaluate. The first one was how revenues and expenditures compare to the population of the city. In the case of Rancho Cucamonga, they have a surplus of $337 of revenue per resident, which is in a positive standing. Next is the debt. So in comparing how much long-term debt the city has in relation to the general fund, the city has about 10% of its general fund obligated to long-term debt, which again is a good standing. Lastly is unfunded liability. For this indicator, we looked at post-employment benefits, or the OPEB, assets as compared to their liabilities. And in Rancho's case, they're collecting 122% of what they owe in that unfunded liability. So definitely a positive there. There's also another set of indicators that can be evaluated in Wang, Dennis, and 2 solvency tests. For this, I also selected 3 indicators. There are more than 3, but the first one is looking at cash solvency and using the cash ratio. When evaluating the Rancho's cash position compared to its liabilities, the city is in a positive position with a cash ratio of 5.34. Next is budget solvency, looking at operating ratio. Again, when evaluating total revenues and total expenditures, the city's operating ratio is in good position. And lastly, looking at service solvency at tax per capita, when evaluating the amount of taxes collected per resident at 65.23, that also is in good position. The third set of indicators I looked at was from the video on how to read your government's CAFR. The 4 indicators I evaluated were net position, unrestricted net position, change in net position, and unfunded pension and OPEB financial health. We already discussed looking at Brown's 10-point test on the city's OPEB financial health. So looking at the net position, the city is in a positive position as its assets and deferred outflow exceed its liabilities and deferred inflows. So the net position at 1.4 is in good standing. Second, the unrestricted net position is in a positive balance, as the positive number shows that the city is not pushing its liabilities to be paid for using future revenues or future tax dollars. Lastly, the positive change in net position is a reflection that the city has a balanced budget. And really taking all of these indicators into consideration, I would conclude that the city of Rancho Cucamonga is in a very good position and is in a solvent city. So thank you very much for watching my presentation. To conclude the presentation, I would say that comparing the initial budget review that we did a few weeks ago on Rancho Cucamonga and now looking at their CAFR, my perspective on the city really hasn't changed a lot. I felt that the budget document was fairly strong, and it actually came to fruition in going through the CAFR too as well. So it was nice to see a complete budget document kind of reflected positively, matching the end result in the CAFR. But thank you again, and I look forward to watching your presentation.